Hello everyone, welcome to today's employment workshop. As many of you already know, my name is Nazanin, and for those of you that don't, hi, nice to meet you. I work here at the International Rescue Committee, helping clients with employment. The team and department that I work for is also known as the Economic Empowerment Department. As you can see on the above slide, it says Economic Empowerment, and it also says what our mission is. What this really means is what we aim to achieve. So I'm going to read it. Our mission is to help you become a self-sufficient, contributing member of society. We provide crucial tools and resources so that you can prosper and rebuild your life in the US. Many of you may not know what empowerment means, and you may have never heard the term before, but I think that it's very important when it comes to employment, so I want to speak to you guys about it for a little bit and give you a better idea of what it really means. So here at the IRC, we, the Economic Empowerment Team, aim to achieve helping you all to become independent so that you can truly achieve economic advancement and be able to really progress in the US job market. It's our job as the Economic Empowerment Team to provide you with the guidance, the tools, the resources, and the opportunities necessary so that you will be able to continue on your career path and to prosper economically on your own. This is what self-sufficiency and being economically empowered really means. It means being able to thrive and achieve economic advancement and progress without being dependent or relying on any help or support from anyone else, whether it be the IRC, the government, other individuals, another agency, so that this way you can really be able to rebuild a life here in the US. Now that you have a better sense of what our larger goals are, today's workshop is going to focus on challenges to employment that many of you may come across and the solutions and resources that you can use and take advantage of to overcome these challenges. The first topic that we're going to cover is being able to speak English and credentials. Being able to speak English is very important for economic advancement and gaining employment in the US, and it's also important to improving the overall quality of life. An employer is much more likely to hire you if you have some English skills and if you're able to speak English versus not being able to speak English at all. For many of you that have certain credentials and education from your home countries, unfortunately, many US employers do not recognize these and they do not transfer over. So they are discounted and they are not equivalent to education and credentials that are received here in the US. And this is because many US employers do not have experience evaluating overseas credentials. But if you are able to speak English, this will increase a US employer's confidence in your education and your foreign credentials, making them much more valuable in the US job market. So how can you go about learning to speak English? Here at the IRC, we offer free English classes for all of our clients, and we offer them in the mornings and the evenings so that you can easily fit them into whatever type of schedule that you have. And we encourage clients to begin taking them as soon as they arrive in the US so that they're immediately exposed to the language and that they immediately start practicing it and really learning it. In the cultural orientations that all of you are required to attend within your first months of arriving here, we stress the importance of being able to speak English and learning English because it really is an important tool in how you're able to rebuild a life here in the US. Also, in our job readiness workshops, we stress the importance of being able to speak English and how this plays a huge role in your employment process and career path here in the US. The next topic that we're going to cover is expectations. Unfortunately, many of you have to realize that getting to a career position in the US that is equal to or in the same field as the job that you may have held in your home country can often take many, many years. This is just part of the process and is the reality of the situation, but if you're able to keep an open mind when choosing a first job, you can recognize that even though you're overqualified for your first position here, it's just a first step in the process. And it's a great way to be able to develop basic English skills and really learn the language and to become culturally aware and to understand how it really works here, like how the US job market works, what it's like to have a job here and to really understand the workplace. It will also be a very positive thing in terms of how other US employers view you because they'll have more trust and confidence in your capabilities and your skills, and they'll be more likely to hire you now that you've had experience in the US job market and you've proven that you have the capacity and the capabilities to really work here in the US and in a US type job. The next topic that we're going to cover is cultural barriers. So, a lot of you may lack a familiarity with American culture, and this is completely normal because everyone has a different culture, and whatever the culture is here, it's most probably different than the culture in all of your home countries. And so, this is why a lot of workplace norms can be a challenge when um, beginning the employment process. And for those of you that don't know what a norm is something that is usual, typical, or standard. So basically, what we're trying to say is that you may not be familiar with what is usual or typical or common in the US workplace because whatever's typical and common here is probably very different than what's typical and common in your home countries. So we're going to cover different terms and concepts that are culturally appropriate here in the US and how they work and explain how they work here in the US. The first term that we're going to cover is the roles and relationships between employees and supervisors. So it's important to note that you guys would be the employees because you're employed by the employers and you work for the supervisors. So supervisors do have authority over employees, but only to an extent. So it's important to understand what type of authority supervisors are allowed to have over employees, especially because you guys are new to the US job market. And so employers may know this and may take advantage of this. But if you're knowledgeable and you know what's acceptable and what's not, and what type of authority they're allowed to have over you, then you can prevent this. So, things that your supervisor can do are that your supervisor can assign you daily tasks. So your supervisor can tell you what to do each day and assign you different tasks to complete. Your supervisor can give you constructive feedback. So after you complete a task, your supervisor can tell you what you did well, what your strengths were, what your weaknesses were, what you could improve on and do better next time. Your supervisor can also monitor your performance and give you deadlines. So give you a time frame of when tasks must be completed. The things that the supervisors cannot do are they cannot force you to work overtime. They can't allow you to work in unsafe conditions that could put your health or life in danger. And they cannot discriminate based on your refugee status or your religion, your national origin, your race, etc. The next cultural norm that we're going to talk about is problem solving and communication. So it's important for you guys to be able to use appropriate problem solving and communication skills in the US workplace. So you should always remain calm and act mindfully. So if an incident occurs or a problem comes up, you shouldn't just immediately overreact. You should just remain calm, take a moment, and then, respond or act. But don't just act right away. You should always demonstrate a team mentality. So you should show that you're able to be a team player and to work with your colleagues, and that you're able to work with people of different backgrounds and of diverse backgrounds. Also, it's always important to report any major or serious disputes and problems to your supervisor. Things that you should never do when it comes to problem solving and communicating: you should never resort to violence or threats, and you should never act impulsively. So that goes back to remaining calm. So if a problem comes up, you shouldn't just act in the moment. You should take a moment, cool off, think about it, and then go back and try to communicate and come up with a solution rather than just get angry. And you should never use offensive language. This includes, racist remarks, making jokes about someone's appearance, someone's race. You should never do that in the workplace. The next topic that we're going to cover is rights in the US workplace. Refugees are vulnerable to rights violations and workplace abuse because employers may take advantage of the fact that they know that you are new to the US and that you've never worked in the US before. So it's important to be knowledgeable on your rights. So, some of the rights that you do have are that you may organize with other workers to protect your rights, and this includes going to industry meetings or joining campaigns and unions regarding different issues about jobs that you may hold, about your industry, about your employers. You have a right to work in safe conditions. You have a right to overtime pay. So if you work overtime, you have to be paid for these overtime hours. And you have a right to a minimum wage. And this depends on each state, but there is a minimum wage that you must be paid for each job that you have. And you also may be eligible for the Earned Income Tax Credit. And this is a refundable tax credit that supplements wages and offsets taxes that are paid by low income workers. And so you may be eligible for this. And you also might qualify for unemployment insurance. And unemployment insurance is also extremely useful for a lot of you that may have part time or seasonal or temporary jobs so that you can be insured for the times that you aren't working. To get a lot more information regarding your rights, I really suggest that you visit these websites. You can visit them on our computers when you're here or at home or on your phone, but I definitely recommend checking them out and getting a lot more information on what your rights are as employees in the US. Now we're going to talk about appropriate behavior. So, as we talked about before, due to cultural differences, what appropriate workplace behavior in the US is likely to be different than that of your home country. So, it's always important to be timely. You should always be on time to work, to meetings, to interviews. It's extremely important. You should always present a clean and professional image. You should never wear torn clothes or look sloppy. You should always look clean and professional. And you should always maintain excellent personal hygiene. I know that this may seem silly, but it is important, especially when you're working closely with others. It's also just respectful, and you should just respect others. You should never speak or act in a sexual manner towards coworkers. This is unacceptable in the workplace. And you should never resort to violence or threatening language, cursing, any offensive language should never be used in the workplace. The next topic we're going to cover is driver's licenses. So, many immigrants and refugees are unable to drive to work because of restrictions in driver's license eligibility requirements. So, what this means is that there are a lot of requirements that a person must meet in order to be eligible to get their driver's license. And unfortunately, a lot of refugees and immigrants do not meet these requirements. So, when it comes to finding a job, if you're not able to get your driver's license, you should definitely try to find a job that is accessible by public transportation. And since we're here in New York, this should be pretty easy because there's buses, the subway. But if you do have to drive to work, you should try to find a friend or a family member who is able to drive and has their driver's license that could drive you to work. Also, if you don't have your driver's license, you automatically do not have insurance, and therefore you should never drive without a license or insurance because this puts everyone on the road in danger. Now we're going to talk about discrimination. Even though discrimination is illegal, unfortunately, some employers may still discriminate on the basis of religion, appearance, immigration status, national origin. And so, even though this is illegal, it does happen. The IRC, though, has built long term relationships with many employers in the area. And so, these employers that offer employment opportunities to refugees are, we've built long term relationships with them. And so, we know that they are able to meet the needs of refugee workers, and most likely discrimination should not occur with these employers. but if any instances of discrimination do come up, you should always report claims to the EEOC, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and you should always report any issues that you have to us at the IRC regarding post-placement issues. So even after you get a job, if any issues come up, including discrimination, you should always report them to us. But as I mentioned before, the employers that we build relationships with are willing to offer jobs to refugees, and they're able to meet the needs of refugees. And they want to offer employment opportunities to refugees of all backgrounds. Now we're going to talk about the application process. And the application process here in the US includes what we call a resume. And so, what the resume is a short, usually 1 page summary of your work experience and your education. And it usually includes personal references. So, personal references usually include previous employers who can say that you did work for them, you accomplished certain things, you displayed certain skills. It should also include your contact information, your name, your address, phone number, and your career goals. And so, the most important thing that you can do in helping us to build your resume is to remember and record whatever work experience you had in your home countries, and remembering the time periods of the jobs that you had, where you worked, the details of your different jobs, your different employers, and the types of skills and roles that you held and what you accomplished at each job. This way, we can work with you to build you a resume and put together an appropriate resume that you can submit to different employers. Also, as you continue to work in the US and get more and more jobs, we can build your resume over time, and we can go back and add each job that you have to your resume. Also, the job readiness classes that we offer here at the IRC will go into more depth about the application process, but most jobs require an interview and a resume, and that's it. But for some jobs, they require their own application. And for, the first job that requires an application, we can definitely guide you through it and help you fill it out. And then for future jobs, you'll be prepared to fill it out on your own, and you'll know how to go about filling out the applications. Now we're going to talk about interview skills. The interview is a crucial step in the job placement process. Most employers will require an interview, almost all, I think, at this point. And so the IRC will help to prepare you for interviews by assisting you with building your resume, as we just spoke about, ESL classes, so that your English skills are much stronger and you're able to better communicate, and through the job readiness classes. And we also will conduct a lot of practice interviews with you throughout your employment search and your employment process here in the US. And this will help you to be really prepared for interviews and to understand how they work and how to present yourself to an employer. So we're going to conduct a practice interview right now. Thank you all for your time and attention today. I hope it is clear that despite the challenges which await you, the IRC and I are your partner and resource. With our support, you will prosper and rebuild a life of success and meaning in the United States. I look forward to working with each of you on this journey. Have a great day, and let's get to work.